I never imagined a Sunday afternoon barbecue would be the beginning of the end. It was a late summer gathering at my parents' estate in upstate New York. The lawn was freshly mowed, kids were chasing each other with water guns, and my wife, Layla, was laughing with my cousin Adrian by the grill. That laugh, it should have been just another sound in the warm hum of family life. But there was something else in it, something too soft, too knowing. Adrian and I had grown up like brothers. He was the charming one, reckless, magnetic, the kind of man people forgave too easily. We'd drifted a bit over the years, but blood is blood. Or so I thought. That day, I noticed the way his eyes lingered on Layla when she wasn't looking. Or maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I just wanted to imagine it. Because the truth would be worse. But the truth, as I'd learned, was a surgeon's. Scalpel, precise, cold, and devastatingly sharp. The first real crack appeared when our daughter, Grace, turned 7. She came home from school with a family tree project. It was a simple assignment. Photos, names, a few lines connecting generations. But when I saw it, something twisted in my gut. Under Dad, she had pasted a picture of me. But under Grandpa, she'd written Adrian's dad. "Sweetheart," I asked, trying to smile. "Why is Uncle Adrian's dad on here?" She blinked. "Because Mommy said I looked just like Adrian." I froze. That night, I confronted Layla gently. She laughed it off, brushed my concern away like lint from her dress. "She misunderstood, love. I told her she has Adrian's eyes. You know, he's family. It's in the genes." But something about her tone rang hollow, like an actor delivering lines that had been rehearsed too many times. That night, I didn't sleep. Weeks turned into months. I quietly began piecing things together, becoming a detective in my own life. I went through old photos, looked too long at Grace's smile, too much like Adrian's. I hired a private investigator, James Delaney, a retired NYPD man who wore suspicion, like a second skin. I told him only this. "I want to know if my cousin has ever crossed a line with my wife." He didn't blink, just nodded and said, "Give me 2 weeks." He returned in 5 days. Delaney sat across from me in the small back room of a cafe near Central Park, slid over a manila folder without a word, inside surveillance shots. Layla visiting Adrian's apartment, frequently, sometimes alone, sometimes with Grace. Emails recovered from an old account, a string of passionate messages exchanged between them during a 6-month stretch shortly before Grace was born. Layla's words etched into my memory. "I don't know how to live with what we've done, but I also can't imagine life without you. The baby. She has your eyes." And finally, a DNA test, conducted discreetly from a brush Adrian had discarded and a hair from Grace's pillow. 98% probability. The floor dropped from beneath me. But that wasn't the end. No. The betrayal went deeper, wider. When I confronted my parents, told them I knew everything, they didn't deny it. My mother wept. My father sighed like he'd been holding a breath for years. They had known. "Your uncle came to us years ago," my father confessed, "told us Adrian was spiraling, that he and Layla had a thing. But it was over, or so we thought. We made them promise to stay away from each other. And when Grace was born, your mother, she asked Layla, and she admitted it. And you said nothing?" I whispered. "We didn't want to break the family," my mother sobbed. "We thought you were happy. We thought Grace would be loved more this way. My family hadn't protected me. They had managed me, like a problem to be contained." I left the house without speaking another word. The divorce was swift. Layla never denied anything. She didn't fight. She just cried. Cried like she hadn't detonated our lives with one selfish choice. Adrian vanished from the city. Word had it he moved west. No forwarding address. But Grace, she stayed. I didn't. Walk away from her. Blood or not, she was my daughter. She loved me. She had trusted me. She wasn't a mistake. She was the one thing that had never lied to me. 5 years later, Grace is 12 now. Smart. Kind. She knows the truth. Layla told her when she was 10. We decided, together, no more secrets. She still calls me Dad. Adrian tried to reach out once. Sent a letter. Said he was in rehab. Said he wanted to build a relationship. I never wrote back. My family gathers sometimes, but I don't go anymore. I built something new, not perfect, but honest. Sometimes I still hear Layla's laugh in my head, that soft, secret laugh. But now, I know exactly what it meant. There are things you overhear as a child that never leave you. Whispers, arguments behind closed doors, the way your name is spoken when they think you're asleep. I was 10 when I learned that my father wasn't. I sat on the stairs clutching my stuffed bear, listening to Mom cry in the kitchen. I knew something was wrong the second I came home from school. Dad hadn't looked at Mom. She hadn't smiled at him. The house had gone quiet, like it was holding its breath. Then she said it, through broken sobs. She deserves to know the truth. We can't keep lying to her. Adrian's her father. The world slipped sideways. After that, everything changed. Dad, not Dad, moved out. I didn't understand why at first. He was still there, just in another place. We had pizza nights on Fridays. He helped with science projects. He picked me up from school with a smile that looked practiced. But something was different in his eyes. It took me 2 years to ask. 2 years of pretending I didn't feel the gap. We were driving home in silence when I asked, "Do you still love me, even though I'm not really yours?" He didn't answer immediately. He pulled the car over, turned to me. His voice was steady, but there was pain behind it. "Grace, I am yours, and you're mine. Maybe not by blood, but that never mattered to me. What matters is everything we've shared, what I gave up to protect you. I love you the same, always." I cried in his arms that day, because I believed him. I still do. I didn't see Adrian until I was 16. He sent a letter first, handwritten, with trembling apologies, asking to meet. My mom left the decision to me. I said yes. He showed up at a quiet cafe, wearing a plain jacket and a nervous smile. His eyes were exactly like mine. It unsettled me. "So, Your Grace," he said. I didn't speak for a long time. I just watched him fidget with his coffee. "Why now?" I asked. He looked up. "Because I wasn't ready before, and I was scared. Scared you'd hate me. Or worse, not care at all." I didn't know what I felt. Rage, curiosity, grief? He was a ghost with my DNA. "I grew up thinking someone else was my dad," I said. "And the worst part is, he still is." Adrian nodded. "He raised you. I didn't. I don't expect to replace that. I'd like to know, you, if you'll let me." I gave him 10 minutes. 10 became 30. We met again the next week. Then the next. It was like learning to read a second language. He told me about his rehab, his regrets, his years in hiding, the women, the hollow victories, the shame. There was something broken in him, but something honest, too. Still, I didn't trust him. Not completely. So I tested him. I asked him for something, a DNA test. I already knew the answer, but I needed to see it. I needed to watch his reaction, to see if he'd flinch. He didn't. When the results came confirming what we both already knew, he just handed them to me quietly and said, "You deserve every truth you ask for." Then came the twist I never saw coming. I was 17, cleaning out my mom's attic when I found a shoebox of old letters. Love letters. Dozens of them. From Adrian. To my mother. Dated after I was born. Letters that proved their affair didn't stop when I arrived. I wish you were mine. Not just in secret. Every time I see her with him, I hate myself a little more. Run away with me. Just you. And Grace. I'll disappear with you, I swear. My hands shook. Because it wasn't a one-time mistake. It wasn't some distant shame they'd left behind. They chose to stay tangled in it. All while pretending to raise me in peace. I confronted. My mom, she wept again, always with the tears. It was complicated, she said. It was selfish, I replied. She tried to justify it. The fear, the confusion, the way Adrian made her feel seen. But all I could think was, you let me live a lie, and then made me carry it alone, so I did something they never expected. I moved in with him, my real dad, the one who stayed, the one who chose me, the man they call Michael. He gave me the silence I needed, the space, the love, unconditional and quiet. Years later, I'm 23 now. I speak to Adrian sometimes, more like a distant uncle than a father. We're rebuilding something, slowly, cautiously. My relationship with Mom is complicated. I love her, but trust doesn't grow back easily. And as for Michael, he walked me down the aisle when I married last year, gave a speech that left every guest in tears. He never called me stepdaughter. He only ever called me his, and that, dear listener, is how you survive betrayal. By refusing to become what it made you. By choosing your truth, even if it's built on ruins. By loving those who earned it, not those who claimed it. A man can survive losing many things, but not the child he wasn't allowed to love. They say time heals, but time is no healer. Time is just distance. It dulls the sting, but never erases the wound. I never stopped thinking about her. Grace. Even when I was half drunk and barely conscious in some God-forsaken motel off Route 66. Even when the noise in my head was louder than the TV. I'd picture her, tiny, chubby-cheeked, learning to walk. I wasn't there for that. I missed her first words, her first steps, her scraped knees and kindergarten drawings. Not because I wasn't alive, but because I was banished, exiled from my own blood. And for what? For loving the wrong woman? Or for never having the guts to stop? Layla. She was my cousin's wife. I shouldn't have looked at her the way I did. But hell, she looked back. She was radiant and complicated, stuck in a marriage that looked perfect from the outside but starved her inside. Michael didn't see it. But I did. And she saw me seeing her. That's how it began. A conversation, a joke, a late-night glass of wine in the kitchen after everyone else had gone to bed. Then it became what we pretended it wouldn't. I never intended to hurt Michael, never meant for it to go that far. But once Grace was born and I knew, with every fiber of my body, I knew she was mine. I felt something primal shift inside me. I remember holding her when she was only a few weeks old. Just a little bundle of soft sighs and warm skin. Michael thought I was just being a doting cousin. But in my head, I was whispering to my daughter. I'm right here, little one. I'm your father, even if no one will let me say it. When Layla told me she was pregnant, she didn't even hesitate. She said she was going to pretend it was Michael's, that it was safer that way. Better for everyone, she said. I should have fought harder. I should have taken the truth by the throat and dragged it into the light, but I was weak, too wrapped up in guilt, in shame, in fear. So I let her lie. I let him raise my child, and I stayed silent until it destroyed everything. The day Michael found out, I knew it before anyone told me. I felt it like a tidal wave hitting my gut. I packed my things and left town before he could find me. Not out of fear of confrontation. No, I could have taken a punch or two. I left because I didn't know who. I was without the lie anymore. I had built a life in the shadows. Once the truth came out, I didn't belong anywhere. Rehab was a pause button, not a cure. I stayed clean for 14 months, then relapsed hard, spiraled, hit bottom again. Only this time, it stuck, because I had nothing left to lose, except the faint chance that one day Grace might want to know me. So I got sober, stayed sober, wrote letters I never sent, watched her grow up through stolen photos and whispered stories from relatives who pitied me. Then, when she was 16, she answered a letter. The first time I saw her across that cafe table, my God, she was Layla's eyes, my nose, Michael's posture. Like fate had taken a scalpel and carved us all into her. She looked at me like I was a stranger, and I was. But I would have sat there in silence for hours if that's what she needed. Because for the first time, I was in the same room as my child, and didn't have to pretend I wasn't her father. That was enough. At least for that day. But the truth always circles back. I should have told her about the letters I wrote Layla after Grace was born. About the affair continuing. But I didn't want to poison her view of her mother or of me. I thought I could bury it. I was wrong. She found them. Of course she did. That attic was a graveyard of things we never wanted unearthed. When she confronted me, I didn't lie. I loved her, I said. Longer than I should have. Longer than she loved me. She nodded. But you didn't love me enough to fight for me. She was right. Now, I live alone in a quiet part of Oregon. I work at a wood shop. I make tables, chairs, whatever people need. There's something peaceful about working with your hands. There's no deception in wood. It bends or it breaks. Honest material. Sometimes Grace writes. Short letters, updates, photos. She looks happy, and that's enough. But every now and then, I dream of a different life. One where I never crossed that line. One where Michael and I are still close. Where I'm the fun uncle, not the stain on the family name. But that's not my story. That's someone else's. Mine is what happens after the damage is done. What remains? A daughter, a cousin turned stranger, a woman I loved and lost. And the silence I earned. I carried the truth inside me like a second heartbeat. The letter was never meant to be found. I wrote it on a stormy night, when the wind rattled the shutters and thunder rolled low like a warning. Grace was 12 then, already taller than the other girls in her class, already asking questions I couldn't answer. She didn't know the man who called himself Uncle Adrian was her father. She didn't know that the man she called Dad, Michael, had almost left me the night he found out, and she didn't know I had one last secret buried in the folds of my memory like a venomous thorn. The affair. It didn't start with love. It started with loneliness. Michael was a good man, steady, ambitious. But he saw our marriage as an accomplishment, not a partnership. We were picture perfect to everyone else. House in the suburbs, matching wine glasses, forced laughs at family BBQs. But inside, I was quietly drowning. Adrian saw it, or maybe he just smelled the fracture. The first kiss happened in my laundry room. The washing machine was running. We were arguing about something stupid, whether I was okay. He asked me twice. I said I was fine. He didn't believe me. He stepped too close, and I didn't stop him. I thought it would be one mistake, but one turned into two, and two into months of stolen moments, late-night texts, and whispered apologies we didn't mean. Don't know when it became real. Maybe the night I cried in his arms and he didn't try to fix me. Just held me. Just let me exist. By then, I think we both knew we were in too deep, but we couldn't claw our way back. The pregnancy. When I saw the second pink line on that stick, my stomach turned to ice. I did the math, and I knew. I had a choice. Tell Michael the truth and risk everything, or lie and raise the child inside. The safest version of a broken world. I told Adrian the truth. I said she was his. I told him I loved him, but I couldn't destroy our entire family. I couldn't. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Do what you have to." He never fought me on it. That's the part that broke me the most. Michael found out, but not how you think. It wasn't a DNA test. It was a journal. My journal. I had written everything down. A part of me needed to confess, even if only to the pages. He found it while looking for Grace's birth certificate. I'll never forget the way he looked at me, like I was a stranger in his house, in his bed, in his life. He didn't yell. He didn't leave. He just sat at the edge of our bed and asked, "Why him?" And I told him the truth. Because he saw me. That answer hurt him more than the betrayal. But Michael made a deal. "We will raise her together," he said. "She is mine now. No contact, no visits. You end it, or I walk, and I bury you." In court. I agreed. I cut Adrian out, blocked his number, pretended the affair was a bad dream. But every day when Grace laughed or looked at me a certain way, I saw him. I thought it would fade, but it didn't. So I started writing letters I never sent, confessions, explanations. One final truth, the one I never told either of them. Grace wasn't Adrian's only child. That summer right before I married Michael, I had a miscarriage. I never told him. But the baby wasn't his. It was Adrian's. The affair had started long before Grace was born, before the wedding, before the vows. That first baby was lost in silence, and that silence followed me like a shadow for years. Grace found the letter last week, the one I thought I had hidden in the box of old recipe books. She brought it to me with trembling hands, her voice cracking. "Is this real?" I nodded. And just like that, the dam broke. She packed a bag, said she needed air, left for Oregon to see Adrian. She didn't slam the door, didn't scream, but her silence said everything. Now, I sit in the same kitchen where it all began, watching the rain slide down the windows. Michael and I don't talk about it anymore. He walks like a ghost, like he's rehearsing an ending neither of us want to write. Sometimes I wonder if I ever loved him, or if I just wanted to be chosen. And I wonder if Adrian can give Grace what I never could. The truth. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. It buries you alive. Grace drove for 14 hours, the Pacific Northwest unrolling around her in mist and green. She had Adrian's address from a Christmas card her mother kept in a box labeled "Do Not Open." She opened it anyway. The cabin was quiet. Nestled in pine and shadow, it looked like a place where people went to disappear. And Adrian had. He opened the door like he'd been expecting her. "Grace," he said, voice low and rough with time. "You look just like your mother." She stared at him. This man who was no longer just an uncle. This man who was her father. Inside, the cabin smelled like cedar, oil, and regret. Tools hung neatly from pegs. A half-carved sculpture of a woman's face rested on a workbench. Grace stopped in front of it. "Is that her?" she asked. He didn't need to ask who. "Yes," he said. "That's your mother." As I remembered. Her. Before the lies. She didn't speak for a long time. Then, "Why didn't you fight for me?" Adrian exhaled slowly. Sat down. "Because I thought protecting you meant disappearing. I didn't want to ruin your life. I figured, if I stayed out of it, you'd grow up without the stain of what we did." "What you did," she corrected. He looked up at her, eyes glassy. "No. What we all did. Your mother. Me. Even Michael. None of us were innocent." She studied his face, searching for something. Remorse Redemption? Did you love her? She asked. I still do. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Later that night, she wandered into his workshop, unable to sleep. That's when she saw it. A hidden drawer under the workbench. It wasn't locked, just tucked away. Inside were letters, dozens of them. All from Layla. Some old, yellowed, others newer, tear-stained. But one was recent. Less than a year old, the ink bled in places. But the words cut through like razors. She's starting to ask questions. And I'm scared, Adrian, scared of what she'll do if she finds out everything, especially about Michael. Grace froze. What? She'll do? There were other names, hints. A torn photograph with 3 people, Layla, Adrian, and a third man with a cigarette and a wolfish grin, written on the back in Layla's hand. We promised never to speak his name again. But someone had scribbled beneath it in red. Too late. Meanwhile, Michael was unraveling. When Grace left, he spiraled. He drank. He screamed at shadows. And one night he found the journal again, but not Layla's, his own. The one he kept during that awful summer, the one with the deal he made with Adrian, something he never told Layla. He hadn't just threatened to bury her in court. He made Adrian pay to disappear. Michael took $60,000 in cash, to walk away, to pretend he didn't know the baby wasn't his. And the worst part? He never spent a dime. He kept the money in a box behind the furnace, because deep down, he wanted to give it back. But now he wanted revenge. He loaded the gun he swore he'd never touch again, and drove north. Back in Oregon, Grace confronted. Adrian, what is this? She demanded, slamming the letter and photo down on the workbench. He went pale. You weren't supposed to see that. Who's the third man? Who were you hiding me from? Adrian hesitated too long. He was a mistake, he said finally. Your mother's biggest one. Worse than me. Worse than anything. He's my father, too, isn't he? No, Adrian said. But he thought he was. And when he found out he wasn't, he trailed off. What? Grace pressed. Adrian looked her dead in the eyes. He tried to kill her, and then came the knock on the door. 3 short raps. Grace froze. Adrian's face changed, like he'd been dreading this moment. He opened the door slowly. Michael stood there, soaked, silent, holding the gun, and behind him, in the shadows, a 4th figure, older, taller, lean and sharp like a knife honed by time, the man from the photograph. The one they never spoke of. He smiled at Grace. Hey, kid, he said. Miss me? Sometimes the devil you buried doesn't stay buried. He just learns to knock louder. The man from the photograph stepped into the cabin like he owned the place. Raindrops slid down the creases of his leather jacket. His boots echoed on the wooden floor. Michael didn't lower the gun. Adrian didn't blink. Grace didn't breathe. Name's Vin Rourke, the man said, eyes flicking to Grace. Though once upon a time your mother called me something sweeter. Grace didn't move. Who are you to her? He grinned. Let's just say I was the first sin. Before Adrian, before the lies, before everything burned down. Adrian growled. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, Vin snapped. But we all come crawling back eventually, don't we? Even the dead. Grace sat down slowly. Start talking. Vin chuckled. Oh, you've got her fire. That same spark Layla had when she torched my Mustang with a bottle of gin and a prayer. Michael barked. Enough stories. But Grace held up a hand. No. Let him speak. Vin circled them like a predator pacing a weakened pack. Back then, Layla was with me. Before any of you. Before Oregon. We were trouble, young, stupid, and madly toxic. Adrian scowled. You beat her. You broke her nose and her ribs. I loved her, Vin hissed. But yeah, I was poison. And when she left, she didn't just vanish. She ran with secrets. One of them was a child. You, Grace. Grace's throat tightened. You thought I was yours. Vin nodded slowly. Until the DNA test proved otherwise. Adrian's blood, not mine. But by then, it didn't matter. I'd already lost her. To him. And then to Michael. Michael sneered. Don't drag me into your psychodrama. But Vin leaned close, almost whispering, You helped bury me, remember? Flashback. 18. Years ago. A fire. A cabin deep in the woods. Police ruled it an accident. No body was ever recovered. But Adrian, Michael, and Layla knew. They thought Vin was dead because they made sure he would be. Grace stared at all of them now. You tried to kill him? Adrian looked away. Michael didn't answer. Vin laughed bitterly. They left me in that cabin to die. But I crawled out. Burned. Broken. Reborn. I've watched all of you, Vin said, voice softer now. I saw Layla build her fake little life. I saw you, Michael, play doting dad. And I saw Adrian waste away in exile. But I waited. For you, Grace. I waited until you were old enough to know the truth. Michael raised the gun. You think you can waltz back into her life and pretend to be some long-lost father? Vin tilted his head. No, Mikey. I came to tell her the truth. The whole truth, Grace's voice cracked. What truth? Vin's grin vanished. She wasn't just hiding you from me. She was hiding something bigger. Adrian cursed. Don't. Vin ignored him. Your mother, she didn't die in her sleep. She was murdered. A silence fell like a hammer. Grace's hands shook. No. They said it was her heart. They lied, Vin snapped. The autopsy was forged, paid for, covered up. Because if anyone looked too closely, they'd have found the needle marks. Needle? Grace whispered. Adrian stood. That's enough, Vin roared. Tell her, Adrian! Michael looked like he'd seen a ghost. And Grace? She already knew. She saw it in Adrian's eyes. The guilt, the shame, the truth. You killed her, she whispered. Adrian collapsed into a chair. A man undone. I didn't mean to, he said, voice thin. She begged me to help her sleep. Said the nightmares were back. I just wanted to calm her. I didn't know she'd mixed pills. I didn't know... Vin stepped forward. You buried the truth, just like you buried me. And you did nothing, Adrian shot back. You watched her spiral and let it happen, because you wanted her to suffer. Michael lowered the gun. Quietly. This family is a mausoleum, he muttered. Everyone buried, everyone rotting. And then Grace stood, still trembling. But her voice was steel. No more lies. She looked at Adrian, then Michael, then Vin. I don't care who loved who. I don't care who screwed who. You're all cowards, and none of you deserve her memory. She turned to the door, rain still pounding the roof. I'm done being the secret you kept in the dark. Vin called after her. Grace, where are you going? She turned once. To find out who my mother really was. Not the version you've all invented. And maybe when I do, I'll finally bury her right. To be continued. The dead can't speak, but they leave behind echoes. And Grace was finally listening. The motel room smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. A box fan clattered in the window as Grace stared at the folder laid across the motel bed. Inside were the records Vin left behind. Copies of old letters, a half-burned photo of her mother with bruises on her neck, a receipt for a private clinic in Nevada, and a name. Dr. Harold Linford. A doctor who'd signed off on Layla's death certificate. A doctor who'd retired abruptly just a week after. Grace dialed the number scribbled beside his name. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but anticipation on. The fourth ring. Hello? His voice was gravel. Old. Tired. Dr. Linford? She asked. My name is Grace. Grace Carson. You signed off on my mother's autopsy, Layla Carson. A long pause. Then, I was wondering when someone would come. 2 days later, she stood in front of a fading blue house with white shutters in the middle of nowhere. The air smelled like damp leaves and old regret. Dr. Linford answered the door himself, older than the photo she found online. His eyes were clouded but not unkind. He motioned her inside without a word. Grace sat across from him as he poured 2 cups of black tea and placed an old cassette recorder on the table. I knew this would catch up to me, he said, almost smiling. And I'm glad it finally did. Dr. Linford leaned back. I was paid to lie. By your father, Michael. Grace stiffened. Linford nodded slowly. He said it was a mercy, that her heart just stopped, and it'd be easier for everyone if it looked natural. But when I got the body, Grace, she had needle marks, fresh, bruising around the injection site, not from insulin or medication, from something else. Grace whispered. What was it? Pentobarbital, he said. A lethal dose. Grace swallowed hard. That's not something you just find in your bathroom cabinet. Linford looked directly at her. Your mother didn't overdose. She was euthanized. Back in the motel, Grace's hands shook as she listened to the recording again. Every word Linford said felt like another shovel of dirt on a coffin that had never been properly sealed. But one thing still didn't sit right. Michael. He didn't strike her as the executioner. He was a coward, yes. A liar. But a killer? No. If he had the poison, where did it come from? Why now? Grace returned to her childhood home under cover of dusk. She didn't knock. She still had her old key. Michael was sitting at the kitchen table, drink in hand. His tie was loosened, sleeves rolled up. You came back, he said, almost relieved. Grace held up the recorder. I spoke to Dr. Linford. Michael froze. I know about the pentobarbital, about the fake autopsy, about the bribe. He opened his mouth, but no words came. She stepped closer. You didn't kill her, did you? Michael shook his head slowly. No, I helped clean up, because I thought I owed her that. Owed her what, Michael? And then he whispered, she was going to turn herself in. Grace blinked. What? Michael drained his glass. She told me everything, about the affair, the baby, about Vin, about Thomas. Grace furrowed her brow. Who the hell is Thomas? Michael looked up and his eyes were haunted. He was your brother. The room spun. She had another baby, years before you, with Vin. She was 16. They gave him up for adoption. Grace stepped back. That's not possible. She found him again, Michael said, voice cracking. Right before she died. She said he was in trouble, that someone was watching him, using him. Grace's mind raced. Why didn't she tell me? Michael said quietly, because he was the reason she left Vin, the reason she ran. She didn't want to put you in the same danger. Later that night, Grace searched through Layla's old journals, ones she'd never dared to read, and there, on the last page of the last one, she found it. His name is Thomas Rourke now. He's working under an alias. I found him. God help. Me, I found him, and someone found me after. If something happens to me, Grace, don't trust anyone. Not Michael, not Adrian, not even Vin. He's still out there. The man who took everything from me, and now he knows where we are. E.V. Those 2 initials seared into her vision. E.V. Grace didn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor beside the box fan, listening to the wind claw at the walls. A name she'd never heard before had entered the story, but she already knew. Whoever E.V. was, he had been the hand behind every domino that fell. Behind Layla's fear. Behind her silence. Possibly even her death. And maybe, just maybe, behind Vin's survival. Some people disappear to survive. Others disappear so you'll never see them coming. Grace was driving south before the sun rose. Her mother's journal lay on the passenger seat, the last page dog-eared and burned into her mind. Thomas Rourke, alias, adopted, hidden, and now someone wanted him erased. She didn't know who Evie was, but she knew one thing. To find the truth, she had to find Thomas, the brother she never knew existed, with Vin gone underground, her next. Best option was a friend from college, Nico Reyes, a cybersecurity analyst who'd once helped her track down a fraud case for a journalism expose. He owed her a favor. And Grace knew he hated loose threads. Over a secure call, she gave Nico everything. Name at birth, Thomas Carson. Born 1991. Possibly adopted under sealed records. Mother, Layla Carson. Father, Vincent Rourke, though he may not be on record. Alias might be Thomas Rourke. Nico whistled softly. You don't ask for easy, do you? Never. I'll ping back in 24 hours. Might get hits from charity databases, federal records, even witness relocation logs. But if this guy's really buried, we'll need to go deep. Grace checked into a roadside motel just outside San Luis Obispo and waited. 23 hours and 42 minutes later, her phone buzzed. Grace, Nico said. I found him. She nearly dropped the phone. His name's not Thomas Rourke anymore. That's old. Outdated. He went darker after 2016. Now he's going by Elias Vale. Grace's breath caught. Evie. No, she whispered. That can't be right. I'm telling you, Nico said. It's the same guy. Fingerprint. Match tied to a cold case in Michigan. Facial rec hit on a customs checkpoint from 4 years ago. He's been working offshore tech contracts for shell companies, some of them tied to money laundering, maybe worse. Grace clutched her stomach. Her long-lost brother was the ghost her mother feared, the man behind the letters, behind the threats, behind Layla's death, Elias Vale, a phantom stitched from half-truths, aliases, and shadows. But now she had a location, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Nico traced a data trail to a small co-working lab just off Cerrillos Road. Vale had logged in under a ghosted IP address 4 days ago. No camera, no audio, just a name, and an encrypted signature that Nico cracked with sheer digital force. Grace didn't tell anyone she was going. She packed her mother's journal, Vin's documents, a hidden recorder, and a single photo, her mother holding a baby. Boy in a hospital blanket. The same boy now known as Elias Vale. The desert wind kicked dust across the cracked sidewalks as Grace walked up to the glass building. Inside the shared workspace, the front desk was empty. A maintenance radio crackled from the back. She stepped past a dozen desks until she saw him, black hoodie, head down, typing with surgical precision, and then he looked up, eyes like hers, a sharp jawline that mirrored Layla's. He blinked once, recognition. But no surprise. He slowly stood, pushing the chair back with the quiet authority of someone always in control. Grace, he said. Her throat tightened. You know me? He nodded. You've been looking for me. I've been watching you look. The air between them was a blade. Grace stepped forward, voice trembling. Why didn't you reach out? Why the secrets? Why threaten her? Vale tilted his head. Is that what she told you? That I threatened her? She was terrified of you. She should have been. He walked over to a locked drawer and retrieved a thin black file. Tossed it onto the desk in front of her. Inside were surveillance photos. Of Layla, Michael, Vin, Grace herself, every one time-stamped, dated, marked in red ink. What is this? She breathed. Vale's voice darkened. The people who adopted me, they weren't saints. They were connected. I learned early how to survive. Learned who was dirty, who to blackmail, who to run from. He paused. But when I found out who my real parents were, I thought I could start over. Reach out to Layla. Tell her I forgave her. His hand trembled. Just once. But she didn't want to be found. She wasn't scared of me. She was scared of what finding me would bring with it. Grace shook her head. So what then? You scared her into silence? Forced her to kill herself? I didn't kill her, Vale said flatly. But you were there. I warned her. She didn't listen. His jaw tightened. There was someone else. Someone who made sure she died. Grace stepped back. Who? He looked her dead in the eyes. Your cousin, Adrian. The floor dropped out from under her. No, she whispered. Adrian didn't even know about you. Are you sure? Elias asked coldly. He was part of the same circles, had access to the same clinics. He forged medical documents for years, Grace. For your family, for Vin, for your father. He knew about the adoption, knew about me. A beat passed. He paid Linford, not Michael. The room spun. Elias stepped closer. He killed her, poisoned her, covered it up, and now he's watching you. The truth doesn't set you free. It burns everything down. Grace couldn't breathe. Her cousin, Adrian, the charming, calculating, family favorite Adrian, had always been there, just out of focus. Too helpful, too perfect, too quiet when Layla's name came up. He knew, and he hid it. I don't believe you, Grace said, even as her voice cracked. Elias didn't flinch. That's because you still think you're safe. Later that night, in a rented motel room just outside. Santa Fe, Grace paced. The file Elias gave her lay open on the bed. Pages of surveillance, digital trails, offshore bank transfers, all traced back to Adrian's shell companies. There was even a payment, dated 2 weeks before Layla's death. Memo. Consulting. L. Carson. Elias, she asked, staring at the line of text. Why didn't you go to the police? He was by the window, silhouetted in the flickering motel sign light. I did. Twice. Guess who their cybercrime expert was consulting with? At the time? No. Adrian. Grace sank onto the bed. Elias turned. He's got deep roots. Judges, doctors, real estate. He launders through your father's old firm. That's why Vin disappeared. He figured it out. Grace rubbed her temples. So what do we do? Elias smiled, but there was no joy in it. We don't call the cops. Then who? He reached into his duffel and pulled out a burner phone. We make him think he's safe, and we bleed him from the inside. 3 days later, they were back in Los Angeles. Grace returned home under the guise of grief and recovery. Adrian welcomed her like a brother. I'm so sorry about your mom, he said, kissing her on the cheek. She hugged him tight and slipped a small recorder into the inside pocket of his coat. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. Elias, meanwhile, dug deeper. With Nico's help, they started a digital leak, dripping data into anonymous whistleblower forums, offshore accounts, suspicious payouts, false identities. Adrian's voice on encrypted calls, arranging hush money. But they needed one final nail, proof of what he did to Layla. Grace found it by accident. Her father, Michael, had kept a locked safe behind an old bookshelf. Grace used a flathead screwdriver, adrenaline, and stubborn grief to pry it open. Inside, a single cassette tape, a medical file with Layla's name, and an old phone, battery bloated, screen shattered, but still intact. The tape was labeled March 3rd L. She played it in Vin's old Walkman. Layla, voice shaking. I told Adrian no, I told him I wouldn't sign the papers, that I wouldn't erase the past. Pause. Layla. He said, You're not thinking clearly, Layla. Think of Grace. Think of your legacy. Layla, whisper. Then he handed me a pill and said, Just sleep on it. Everything will be better tomorrow. Tape clicks off. Grace stopped breathing. He'd drugged her, not just emotionally manipulated her, he killed her. That night, Grace called Elias. I have the tape. Then it's time, he said. Time for what? Elias's voice was calm, cold, final. To take everything from him. The plan. Grace invites Adrian to a private dinner, says she wants to talk legacy, estate, moving on. Elias hacks Adrian's phone mid-meal, planting spyware and retrieving incriminating messages. Nico schedules a timed release of Adrian's full digital file to press, FBI, and IRS, all set to hit the moment Adrian leaves the dinner. Grace plays the tape. Elias waits outside, just in case Adrian decides to run. The dinner was held at Le Jardin, a discreet French bistro downtown. Adrian arrived in a tailored navy suit, all smiles and charm. Grace wore black, the same shade her mother wore the night she last saw Adrian alive. They ordered wine. They laughed. Talked about family, future, regrets. Then, between bites of duck confit, Grace placed the recorder on the white linen tablecloth. I want you to hear something. Adrian's smile faltered. The tape played. He didn't speak, didn't blink. When it ended, Grace leaned forward, voice like frost. You killed her, and you tried to make it look like she did it herself. Adrian glanced at the exits. You won't get away with this, he said softly. Grace smiled. You already didn't. Outside, Elias watched Adrian leave, face white, movements tight, panicked. As planned, Adrian didn't make it 5 steps before 4 black SUVs pulled up and surrounded him. IRS, FBI, LAPD, every agency had received the leaks. It was over, but something felt wrong. Elias stepped back into the shadows, because as Adrian was cuffed and stuffed into the car, he smiled, not panicked, not afraid, smiled. Back in her apartment, Grace stared at the empty tape recorder. She should have felt relief. But her phone vibrated. Unknown number, she hesitated, then answered. A familiar voice rasped on the line. You think it ends with him, Grace? There were 4 of us who signed that paper. You just took out one. Every family has secrets. Ours just happened to bleed. Grace didn't sleep that night. Not because Adrian was gone, carted off in a fleet of black government vehicles. Not even because the whisper on the phone confirmed what she feared most. That Adrian wasn't working alone. It was the voice, familiar, low, calm, cold, almost familial. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Elias sat across the room with a mug of black coffee and Nico's encrypted laptop reading through the documents. They'd leaked. Anything yet? She asked. Elias didn't look up. Too much. Meaning? Meaning Adrian was just the tip of a very sharp, very dirty iceberg. He wasn't just moving money. He was hiding people, fake identities, and a paper trail that leads all the way back to... He stopped. To what? Elias closed the laptop. To your uncle Dominic Castell, her father's older brother. War vet turned real estate mogul. One of the few family members who hadn't shown up to Layla's funeral. I haven't spoken to him in years, Grace murmured. Exactly, Elias said. He's ghosted your family ever since the fire at the old vineyard. Guess who owned that land through a shell company tied to Adrian? Dominic. Elias nodded. Looks like Adrian was laundering hush money through a network Dominic built. Blackmail, land grabs, dirty inheritances. And Layla? Grace asked. Elias hesitated. That's the part I don't like. 2 days later, Grace stood in front of a forgotten house in Napa, Dominic's estate buried in rows of decaying vineyards and the smell of damp wood. He answered the door with a shotgun in hand and a scar across his face she didn't remember. Well, well, he said, lowering the gun. The prodigal niece returns. I want to talk, she said. He raised an eyebrow. About Adrian? Or about the baby? Grace's blood ran cold. Inside, Dominic poured himself a bourbon. He didn't offer her one. You always thought Layla had that child in Europe, didn't you? He said. Switzerland, the whole family did. Grace nodded slowly. Well, she didn't, he said, taking a sip. She had the baby in a private clinic outside Tijuana, paid for by Adrian, arranged by me. Why? Grace asked. Because it was the only way to keep her from ruining your father. She blinked. Ruin him how? Dominic sat down across from her, suddenly looking very old. That baby wasn't Adrian's, Grace, and it wasn't your cousin. What? He reached into a drawer and handed her an old envelope. Inside were 2 documents, a birth certificate and a paternity test. Father, Michael Castell. Mother, Layla Carson. The air left her lungs. No, she whispered. That's not possible. It's not just possible. It's why your mother never forgave him. It's why she left, and it's why Adrian had to silence her. Grace staggered back, nearly dropping the envelope. Your father had an affair with Layla, Dominic said, and she bore his child. That made her dangerous, especially when she threatened to tell you. Grace shook her head, heart racing. Where's the child now? Dominic's lips curled into a grim smile. That's the 3rd name. Back at the motel, Grace slammed the envelope down on the table. Elias read the documents in stunned silence. Your father, he said. Christ. He's been dead 5 years. Took the truth with him. Maybe not, Elias said, pulling up the laptop again. Let's say Dominic is telling the truth. That means there's still one person who might know where the child is. Grace looked up. Who? The last person listed on the prenatal file, he said, turning the screen toward her. It was a scanned intake form from the clinic in Tijuana. Nurse on record, Lucia Torres. They found her 3 days later in Santa Monica, retired, remarried, living quietly under a different name. Grace approached her on a park bench while Elias watched from a distance. Lucia? Grace asked. The woman hesitated. I need to know about a woman named Layla Carson, Grace continued. You helped her give birth to a baby 15 years ago. Lucia's face changed. Slowly, she nodded. I remember her. Quiet. Scared. Where's the child? Grace asked. Lucia looked down at her hands. They told me the baby would be put up for adoption, but 3 days after the birth, a man came. Not a social worker. Rich. Cold. Said he was the father's lawyer. He took the baby. No questions. Do you remember his name? Lucia thought for a long time. I don't, but I remember his ring. Grace frowned. His ring? Lucia nodded. Gold, with a black stone. Looked like a family crest. Grace's breath caught. Her grandfather had worn the same ring. So had her father. And so did her brother. That night, Grace sat in the dark, eyes wide, hands shaking, the voice on the phone, the final name on the list, the last person tied to Layla's baby, the man who wore the ring, her brother Ryan, the only one who'd hugged her at Layla's funeral and whispered, some things are better left buried. When the foundation cracks, every lie starts to tremble. Grace couldn't breathe. Her brother, Ryan, the final name on the list, the one she'd trusted, the one who had stood by her at every crossroads in their family's twisted history. He was the link she'd been missing. And yet, she was standing here, in her brother's guest room, staring down the possibility that the child she'd spent her life thinking was Adrian's, the child of betrayal, of twisted love, of lies, was somehow bound to her bloodline in ways she never could have imagined. Her brother. The thought gnawed at her, chewed through the very fabric of her understanding. Everything she thought she knew about her family, everything she'd built her world around, was suddenly crumbling like sand in her fingers. 3 hours later, Grace stood in front of the door to Ryan's house in Venice Beach. She could hear the faint sound of music playing from inside, a jazz tune, one of their father's favorites. Ryan was home. Elias stood behind her, his usual calm demeanor giving way to something that felt more like concern. "Grace, you don't have to do this alone," she shook her head, the weight of her father's ring still heavy in her palm. "I have to. This is family. He's family." "Family," Elias echoed. "But sometimes blood is the last thing that ties us together." She gave him a half-hearted smile, then knocked. Ryan opened the door after a long pause, looking both surprised and mildly amused to see his sister standing there. "Grace," he said, stepping back to let her in. "I wasn't expecting you." "Yeah, I'm sure you weren't," Grace replied, her voice flat. He frowned, then led her into the living room, where an old leather couch sat beneath a large window overlooking the beach. The sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, casting long shadows in the room. "What's going on?" Ryan asked, settling into the armchair opposite her. Grace took a deep breath and reached into her bag, pulling out the envelope with the birth certificate and the paternity test results. She placed it between them on the coffee table. "Do you recognize this?" she asked quietly. Ryan glanced at the documents and then back at her, eyes narrowing. "What is this?" "I know about the baby," Grace said, her voice trembling, slightly. "The baby that Layla had. I know it wasn't Adrian's. I know it was—" "Stop," Ryan cut in, his voice dangerously low. He stood up abruptly, causing Grace to flinch. "You don't know anything, don't I?" Grace's voice hardened. "I know everything. About you, about Dominic, about the lies, and about that damn ring, the one you've been wearing for years." Ryan froze. His hand instinctively went to his chest, where the gold ring with the black stone glinted in the fading light. "Layla's baby," Grace whispered, almost to herself. "You were the one who took her, weren't you?" The room felt cold, the weight of their shared history pressing down on them. "Grace," Ryan began, but she cut him off. You knew about the affair, and you helped cover it up. You helped Dominic hide everything. And then," she swallowed. "And then, you took the child. You didn't let her live. You made sure she stayed hidden in the shadows, just like all the other dirty secrets." Ryan stared at her for a moment, his face expressionless. Then, slowly, he sat back down. His hand, still resting on the ring, clenched into a fist. "Layla's baby wasn't supposed to live," he said quietly. "That was the deal. Dominic made it clear. If she had the baby, it would ruin everything. It would destroy all of us. It would destroy our father's legacy. So I did what I had to do." Grace's stomach dropped. "You killed her." "No," Ryan said, shaking his head. "I didn't kill her, but I made sure the baby wasn't hers. That child, he wasn't supposed to exist in our world." "What do you mean?" Grace demanded. "You're talking about a human being, my niece Ryan. Why did you hide the child?" Ryan looked away, his gaze distant. "Because the baby wasn't just any child. He was my child." Grace's heart skipped a beat. "What?" Ryan finally looked at her, his expression dark and resigned. "I didn't just take the child from Layla. I was the one who fathered him. Not Adrian, not anyone else. Me." Grace felt the ground beneath her feet shift. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that's impossible." "It's the truth," Ryan said softly. "I didn't want him. I didn't want anything to do with that woman, but she trapped me. I was drunk. She told me I was the only one she could trust. And when I found out she was pregnant, I thought, what if this is a chance to fix everything? I thought I could control it, keep the family together, protect us. And I was so damn scared, Grace. You don't know what that kind of pressure does to a person." Grace could barely process his words. She felt like she was drowning. "So you used her," she spat. "You used her and then sold her out, so you could protect yourself. And the whole time you were lying to me, to our entire family. I was trying to protect you, Ryan said, his voice cracking. I was trying to protect all of us. You don't know what it's like to be trapped in a corner, to have everything you know, everything you've been raised to believe suddenly on the line. I thought it was better this way. For everyone. But it wasn't, Ryan. It wasn't better for anyone, Grace said, standing up, her hands shaking with rage and disbelief. Layla's dead. And all of this, all of it, was for nothing. Ryan's face twisted, his eyes flashing with something darker than regret. Everything we've done, it's been for nothing, he repeated quietly. But you don't understand. There's no going back now. The child, he's gone. In the end, the truth costs more than we can afford. Grace stood frozen, her world unraveling with each word Ryan spoke. The weight of his confession crushed her chest, every beat of her heart now a drum of impending doom. She wanted to scream, to tear into him with every word of betrayal she could muster, but she couldn't. The truth of his admission paralyzed her. Ryan's gaze shifted to the ring on his finger, that damnable family crest. He twisted it slowly, as if the motion itself could release him from the suffocating tension in the room. I never meant for it to end like this, he said, his voice so low it almost disappeared into the hum of the room. But now that it's all out in the open, I don't know what else to say. There's no fixing it. Fixing what? Grace's voice was raw, barely a whisper. There's nothing left to fix. You lied to me. You lied to all of us. You destroyed lives for your own peace of mind. Not just mine, Ryan countered, standing up slowly, his gaze dark. You think I'm the only one with blood on my hands? The family was built on secrets, and now it's all crumbling. Down. Grace felt the coldness creep up her spine. What does that mean? What are you talking about? Ryan hesitated, running a hand through his disheveled hair. His eyes flickered briefly toward the door, as if he were searching for an escape. It means, he said, his voice trembling slightly, that there are people who aren't done yet. This isn't just about us anymore, about you, about me. There's someone else who knows. Grace's stomach lurched. Who? Ryan's lips pressed together, his face hardening. Dominic! Dominic? What are you talking about? Dominic has always been playing a bigger game than anyone realized. When Layla got pregnant, it wasn't just about keeping it quiet. It was about power, Grace, about control. The whole family was involved, and that includes you. Her mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle that had shattered her world. What do you mean, me? What does Dominic want from me? Ryan took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for the next words. It's not just about the baby. It's about you. You were supposed to be the next in line, the one to inherit everything. That's why you were kept in the dark. They needed to keep you clean. But now everything is out in the open. Grace's pulse hammered in her temples. No, that's not true. They wouldn't. They already did, Ryan interrupted, his voice urgent. And they're not done with you. Dominic won't let you go, Grace. He never intended for you to uncover all this. You've crossed a line and now... What? Grace demanded, taking a step toward him. Now I'm supposed to be scared of him? Ryan's eyes met hers with a chilling intensity. Now you have to run. The following days blurred in a haze of paranoia and fear. Grace had no choice but to confront the fact that her entire life had been manipulated by the Castell family. The web of lies, the betrayals, the secret child, everything had been part of a larger scheme to keep control over their wealth and legacy. Elias, ever the pragmatic one, had been on edge ever since Grace's revelation about Ryan. They both knew that with Dominic's involvement, things were about to get even more dangerous. We can't trust anyone anymore, Elias said. One evening, as they sat in his apartment, poring over the files they'd managed to extract from Adrian's compromised network. Not your brother, not Dominic. Whoever is behind all of this, they have eyes everywhere. Grace nodded, her mind racing with 1,000 possibilities. The one thing that was certain now was that nothing was what it seemed. "You're right," she said quietly. "But we need to figure out what Dominic's next move is. If he's still trying to control the family, then he's not going to let this go." Elias leaned forward, eyes flicking to the laptop. "And if Ryan's right? And they're coming for you?" Grace stiffened. She knew the implication. Her inheritance, her place in the Castell legacy, the control over the family estate. It was all at risk. But more than that, the truth about her father, about the choices he had made, about the bloodline she was tied to, it all threatened to swallow her whole. "Let's find Dominic," she said, her voice steel. The next few days were a blur of surveillance, cryptic phone calls, and tense meetings. Grace was determined, pushing herself deeper into the murky world her family had built, a world where no one could be trusted and every step felt like a trap. It was a late evening when the call came, a burner phone, the same one Grace had used to communicate with Adrian's source. "I know what you're doing," the voice said, low and cold, "and you're running out of time." "Who is this?" Grace demanded, her heart hammering. "Who the hell are you?" "You'll find out soon enough," the voice replied, "but don't waste your time looking for Dominic. He's not the one you should be worried about. It's the other one, Ryan."